I'm going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, Eric Hayes, Katie Miller here. John, I'm sorry, that's Tina
Clark, yes.
Tina Clark. Jerry Welch.
Here, but I don't count.
You don't
Here.
count.
No, Dale and I don't count.
Curtis is here. Angela.
Here.
And Kevin's not here, and I am here. Cindy don't. Well, welcome to everyone. Glad that we all made it in person. It's good to be face to face and together again. If you would like, we can review the meeting minutes from last time.
Can't approve it, but you can review them if you
Okay.
like.
I'll give you a little time to review them. And we'll just approve them the next meeting. You're gonna be my
Well, I'm not the,
my spark notes over here.
he's Robert's-
Parliamentary.
I'm not the Robert's Rules of Order guy, but
Okay,
I'll do the
you'll be
best I
my
can.
spark
I'm
notes.
there, I'm there.
So Cindy, you sent out an email after that meeting and I wasn't there. And was that like the vision that we decided on?
That was the
The
mission.
mission.
Mission
Um,
statement.
Okay.
Tonight, we were gonna work on the vision. We'll work on it,
Okay.
yes. Okay. Dale has some information from City Council that he'd like to present on, and we have a guest.
We do. And really not going to present it. I think you all have had an opportunity to read some of the recommendations from the Alliance. What the council was looking to do, in October, the ordinance sunsets for the, oh, we got a quorum, for the Police Community Engagement Board. It's fairly certain that they're going to renew the ordinance for the board. But what they were looking for was for some things that you all thought might either edit or amend the ordinance to help better accomplish your mission. As I said, you have some recommendations from the Alliance. I think some of them were probably good recommendations. A couple of them were concerned in terms of the city charter and actually the law. And what I wanted to do was, because I'm sure you want to consider, what they've recommended, was to ask the city attorney to provide some guidance on some of the things that were recommended that probably we can't do or shouldn't do. And everything else is open for discussion. So, Neil, if you could just briefly go over that.
Maybe you
Easier
could
so
come and sit with us.
You don't all have to crane your necks this way. So I have a daughter-in-law who is teetering on the brink of my third grandchild as we speak.
Mhm.
So if I get a cough and I say, see it, you guys understand. So I was given the recommendation, of course, I reviewed our existing ordinance. And I looked at this in a broader context. Because we have, so when you look at our charter, we are a charter city. That means that we are created as a result of certain legislative action, and we have delegated authority that's given to us directly by the legislature of the state of Missouri. And we have many of the same powers that they have. And one of the things you do when you go to our charter is you see that we have the authority to create boards and commissions. You are one of those. If you look at it in the charter, of course, there's no mention of you all because you are something that came along long after the charter was first created. But it says boards and commissions exist to carry out the powers that are designated in the ordinances that create them, insofar as they are consistent with the charter and with state law. So you have to recognize that you as an organization don't exist in a vacuum, but you exist as part of a larger organization. What you do and the things that you pass can affect or be affected by our own ordinances, our own charter, and by state law. And so what I was asked to do was take a look at the things that were proposed and compare them to the various ordinances and statutes that would affect them, to talk about what we can do, what perhaps we can't do, and some gray areas in between, all right? So again, anytime you're doing these sorts of interpretations, they are just that, they're interpretations. Obviously, these are my opinions as a lawyer, and other people might differ in these opinions, but I think that they're pretty clear on most of these things. So if you're okay, I'll just jump into the proposals that are there and the ordinance that exists. And the first thing that we look for is we look for clarity and purpose, and we look for clarity in the words that we use. I'm a big believer. I had, excuse me, I had a professor in law school who was famous or infamous, depending. His name was Vince Immel. He was the dean of the law school once upon a time. He knew Vince Immel. And he was a big proponent of English. Speak English. Make it simple. You don't have to use a lot of wherefores and theretofores and all that sort of thing. Make it something that everybody can understand. And as a consequence, we want to look for ordinances and bills that also use that very clear language that tell you the things that we need to do. And I will start by saying one of the things that I saw, and I understood what the motivations were, but one of the things I saw, for instance, in section 4.1205, particularly subsection 2, was language that is it says board members shall have, you're talking about qualifications for appointments. It says board members shall have a demonstrated commitment to racial equity based on their professional, civic, or personal experience, training, special interest, or exhibited abilities. I get all that language, except for a demonstrated commitment. What does that mean? Now, again, it can mean what you want it to mean, but I think that you probably need to think about what that language might be and make sure that you're very clearly stating what it is you're looking for. Board members shall have completed training focused on the role that systems and institutions play in maintaining racial inequity, or shall undergo a full training regarding the same at the city's expense within the first 3 months of their term of the role. Well, you got a couple problems there. You're mandating that a commission member engage in training, which the commission member is doing this voluntarily, and they may agree to do that, but now you're spending money from the city, and you guys don't have the power to spend money. All right. So one of the things that is not in your in the ordinance that creates you is the ability to spend money. So you want to think about that. Now, that doesn't mean you can't accomplish that in another way, but again, you don't have the ability to spend that money. So we want to think about that, and I think we want to state clearly what our purpose is. I think you could probably clean that up just by saying, you know, again, the board members shall have a commitment demonstrated, maybe. I don't know exactly what that means. Does that mean that I have to have been on a board? Does that mean I have to have had, you know, prior training? I don't know what that means. So we want to be clear because, you know, again, these are your qualifications, and we want to make sure that as council is selecting these people, that they know what it is that they should be looking for. That's not a big deal, but again, it's just something to think about, okay? The next thing that I would go to is 4.1205 and particularly subsection 10. And this is a much larger topic because your subsection 10 describes the chief of police or the designee shall serve as an ex officio member. The ex officio member may participate in the police community engagement board meetings and deliberations at the invitation and direct and discretion of the board. It will not be a voting member. Now, an ex officio member by their definition is not a voting member. But if they're a member, which an ex officio member is, you can't exclude them. So this provision here that would say that they're here at the invitation and discretion of the board, they're either a member or they're not a member. You can't have it both ways, okay? So again, I understand, I think, why that's here, because as I look down forward further in the proposed changes in the ordinances, you have this listing only sessions. And again, it has a provision in there which would exclude the chief from that. And we'll talk about that in just a minute, but you can't have that both ways. They're either a member or they're not, okay? Same is true with the city council liaison, where again, they shall, in section 11, the city council shall select a city council liaison who shall not be a member of the board, but shall attend meetings of the board aside from citizen only. So again, you're excluding the liaison, and I don't think you can do that. Now, let me tell you, one of the things that I have in terms of a problem with that particular language is that I can't imagine why you as a board, which is dedicated to the concept of transparency and openness, would ever have a closed session. I understand what you want to do with the listening session, but under 610, which is the sunshine law itself, there's a very distinct list in 610.021, which is the section that deals with closed records and closed sessions. There are very specific reasons why you can close a session, okay? Closing a session just so you can have a conversation is not one of them. So there's a sunshine law problem with this idea of doing something that would say, we're just going to close the door and nobody can come in. And that includes an ex officio member and includes the board liaison. Again, I have a problem. And I can't conceive of a situation where you as a commission would ever have a closed meeting. Okay, so in order to have a closed meeting, you have to fit in one of those categories. And there's 27 sections, I think, under 021. There might be more, there might be less, might be 26. But there's a lot of things, a lot of reasons why you can do this, but none of them would be within the purview of what you as a commission are doing. So again, you can have attorney-client communications, you can talk about real estate, you can talk about hiring, firing, and discipline, but that's got to be specific to an employee. And you guys don't have the authority to hire, fire, or discipline. So again, as you move through there, there's a lot of reasons why you can close them, but I can't conceive of one of them that would be within your purview. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's trying to get at, you know, some of the stories. What we are is a commission that's trying to create some healing
Yes.
in the community, which I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
And when people share, we had a session where we had some young people sharing their stories.
Mhm.
And it can become very personal and emotional. And, you know, it's hard to have a completely open session. Is there any way we can provide something like that?
Not in
For
the
the-
context of the meeting.
Okay.
So again, the problem is under sunshine. It says meetings must be open unless you fit within one of those categories. So again, as you go through and look at the categories, there are a lot of things that are specific, but none of them would fit what you just described, okay? Now, again, that doesn't mean, I guess, that there couldn't be some situation somewhere. But I know what you're talking about, I get it, but there's just nothing under sunshine that lets that happen. And we are compelled to keep the meeting open unless we can fit into one of those things. Now, I'll look at it again to see if I can find something, and I try and be creative. Although again, presumptively, if you look at sunshine and you look at everything that they say, the presumption is that everything's open, okay? And you got to start with that because you also have to end with that. So again, we have to be very careful and not be too creative because we don't want to play hide the ball, particularly with a commission that's dedicated to the concept of transparency. Okay? So it seems counterintuitive, but again, I'll look and see if there's something that would allow that to
I
happen.
mean, it almost acts, it's almost willfully keeping us from completing what we set out to complete, is healing. I don't know how you can do that. You're in therapy. I mean, I just don't know how you can do that.
I was trying to think, because I'm not a lawyer, but is there a legal way to, like, we're a city council board,
Mhm.
but is there some other
Some other kind of entity.
kind of entity that would allow for something
Yeah.
like that?
So again, we have to be careful because we also don't want to construct things that would just simply allow us to skirt sunshine.
Mhm.
Because you're a commission created by the council, you're bound by the sunshine law. So again, I hate to be the bearer of that bad news, and I understand the difficulty of it. But, you know, again, what you're talking about is a counseling session where we want to be able to basically bare our souls and talk about things that
Yeah.
we've seen. And honesty comes from a closed door. It really does. I get it. But that's absolutely contrary to what we do under sunshine. So there's really not a lot of middle ground. This was never dedicated to the concept that you're talking about. Transparency in and of itself, again, I'm in favor of it. I think we need to have it. There's just no easy way to squeeze it in to.
I mean, I don't know how you can do that if what do we do? Because really, it kind of, it locks us.
So what you can do in situations like this is you can do individual sessions where one person would sit down and interview one-on-one. And then you can prepare a summary that would exclude the name of the person to protect their anonymity and their privacy. And you can then share that amongst yourselves. It's not perfect, and maybe it isn't as good a way to do it, but it's the only way I
It's
would
not
do
as
it.
dynamic, but it's,
And that was gonna be my question, and then further, then if people are sharing, is there information, what do we need to tell them about what they're sharing with us?
So-
How do we need to advise
That's a
them, is the question that.
So I would tell you this, if you generate a document that is going to be anonymous, so again, one of the things Sunshine lets you do, when you're talking about documents that are closed documents, you can redact information, okay? If you prepare a document that is anonymous, so I spoke to A, and she told me, or he told me this information, you can come into your commission meeting and you can share that does become a matter of public record, okay? But it doesn't have the name of the person in there. So again, you're not talking about their address, we're not showing their face, all of that sort of thing. And that's probably the best way that I can think of it. I can pull up my iPad and go over all the sections of 021, but I can't think of a way to squeeze you in other than do that.
So
Now, again, the good thing is you're doing that openly, you're doing it in an open meeting, but anything that gets shared with you that's talked about here becomes an open record.
So I'm saying, should we share that with people who join our meetings, that everything they're sharing is open record?
Yes, sir.
So that's what I.
Yeah, you really should, because it is.
So an example, when I was setting up the Webster University meeting with some of the students, as I was setting it up, some students were starting to report some things to me. And since I'm individually talking to them, I could take notes and bring that here.
Yes, sir.
And that's still all legal as
Yes, sir.
long as I just do it as a
Yes,
one-on-one.
yes. So we
thing.
don't.
So we can each go to our
used to
different
be
groups
ambassadors of.
and be ambassadors of the group, taking
Exactly.
notes, detailed notes, and then present them to this board.
So we don't try and tell, we being Sunshine, doesn't try and tell you what to do in terms of your interactions or your information gathering. All we deal with is what happens when you have a quorum and you meet as a quorum, okay? So once you do, and once you convene a meeting, that's an open meeting, and the records and things that you talk about in that meeting are open records. Things that you do outside, even if you carry it in, now, once you've carried it in, you know, again, if you elect not to include the names, but say, on such and such a date, I had this conversation, here's what they said to me, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to identify those people. There's nothing in Sunshine that says, if you're gonna rely upon a document, we need to know what their name is, where they live, what their social security number is, none of that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
And you can do this with two people also. You
Yes, ma'am.
just can't do it with.
And you can do it with three.
You can do it with three. but
Anything
you
less
can't
than
do
a quorum.
Anything
Okay.
less than a quorum, you can do that.
So again, had the Reverend not shown up tonight, we could have had a meeting and we could have had people come in and we don't have to turn it on because it's not technically an open meeting at this point because we're
I'll
on.
leave.
No, Aaron.
So again, we could have had those conversations as long as you don't have a forum. But again, we also have to be careful not to construct falsely things that dodge Sunshine. You want to abide by the spirit of Sunshine, which is transparency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know Sunshine, I'm a
Yeah.
school principal.
No, well, you know what I'm talking about. And there are lots of provisions in there that talk about protection, closed records for students and personally
Yeah.
identifiable information, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But again, just, it wasn't constructed for a commission like this, but we're stuck with it.
I'm frustrated.
Okay, yeah, I get it. I get it. So section 4.1210, which has to do with points of contact. We have to be careful here as well because of Sunshine. So in this instance, what you said is the chairperson shall collaborate with the vice chair to set the agenda for the board meeting. So you already have a provision that says the police community engagement board shall annually select one of its members to serve as chair and vice chair. We've added additional points here. The thing you have to remember is if there's information being gathered as a chair and a vice chair, that information is subject to Sunshine. So the dangerous part of this is effectively you've made the chair and the vice chair your custodian of records, which we have a custodian of records, and that is Katie Nakasano. So we want to be very careful about this. Any emails that come into you, you have to make sure are kept. If they're coming into you in your official capacity, Sunshine mandates you keep them. Okay? So again, you can do it. It's not illegal, but recognize that you've undertaken some pretty significant authority. And under no circumstances, if you are accepting these emails, do you want to do it under your personal email? because that opens the door to your personal emails. So if you're going to do this, you want to create an email address for yourself as the chair or the vice chair that is a Webster Groves email. Makes it easier for us to collect and maintain the data, and it keeps your privacy private.
What if somebody emails us in one of our other emails?
So that's not designed, so somebody just emails you and says, hey, when's this meeting going to occur, that sort of thing. That's not a public record. That's not something you have to worry about. But in this instance, where you are inviting yourselves to be the recipient, that's another question. So again, you can do this, but you could also do it with just sort of an anonymous email site and say, if anybody has any questions, email these things to, pceb.org or whatever it's going to be, and we will make sure that these things are distributed. But you'll want to tell people if they're sending these things, recognize that this information does become public, and it does, again, any identifying materials would become public. Questions on that? Okay, we want to be careful with that. Section 4.1215, the listing only session. We talked about this. I think that is a problem under Sunshine. And again, go back to the exclusion of the ex officio members, and it is also a problem under the charter because of the ex officio part of this thing. We have adopted Robert's rules, and as the chief pointed out to you earlier, we know it's out there. An ex officio member is a member. So as long as you have identified them as members or council liaison, they have to be allowed in. So the listing only session does become problematic, both because of Sunshine and because of the charter. 4.1220 duties. So there's several things about this particular section which could be problematic, okay? So your existing ordinance says the duties of the Police Community Engagement Board shall be offering advice and making recommendations via the chief of police or his or her designee on issues concerning public safety and police services within the city as follows. Now we're seeking to strike that last language, beginning with offering advice, and include this language. The duties of the Police Community Engagement Board shall be to help the city of Webster Groves and the city's police department ensure that local police systems, culture, and policy are accountable to Webster Groves community values and priorities, with the goal of dismantling historical inequities in policing and building a community that feels safe to everyone. I think that is better stated in the earlier section, which talks about the board's purpose, because this power suggests that you have perhaps a greater power than you can be allowed under our charter and under state statute. Okay, and what I mean by that basically is that I understand these as goals and purposes, but as a duty, again, as a goal and purpose, I get it. As a duty, you have to have a way of actually doing that, and we don't have a way that sets that out. So you have to look at this thing in its entire context, and I think that's problematic here as a duty. Okay, now again, we go on to say, and this is why I'm saying we have to look at these things organically. We go on to say, suggesting methods to enhance relations between the police department and the people of Webster Groves, including to promote healing of past personal and historical drama. I don't have a problem with that. Creating and publicizing a process for community members to bring concerns, values, and priorities to the board. I don't have a problem with that. We go on to say, providing the chief of police, in the original ordinance, it says, with a community perspective concerning police department programs and their effectiveness. You've added now, providing the chief of police, city council, and the city manager. You extended that very, very broadly beyond just the chief of police to a response directly to city council and city manager. And related recommendations, policies, and practices. You have a situation where, again, under your original purposes and duties, you are in an advisory capacity of sorts, okay? And again, you're talking about community engagement. This greatly expands what it is that the original ordinance set out to do. That doesn't mean you can't do it, okay? But it greatly expands what it is that that had been programmed in the very first instance. But when we talk about providing the chief with the community perspective on policies and practices, I get that too. I don't necessarily have a problem there. But to the city council and city manager, how does that get done? You have the chief here as an ex officio member, but how are you going to do that to city council and to the city manager? Is that going to be in the form of a report that you're going to do? Is that going to be in the form of a meeting once a year? Again, I think you got to spell that out, and you got to understand what the terms and limitations might be. So you need greater clarification. You need something more than what you have here. Subsection D, which is promoting public awareness. Again, that's your purpose from the first instance and discussion. No problem with that. Of police department policies, services, and programs. Again, I think that that's already there, but you're not hurting anything by saying it again, including but not limited to business, residential, crime prevention, officer safety training, officer anti-bias training, domestic violence prevention, and school district police community programs, and officer recruitment. So again, with the operative words here being promoting public awareness, I don't have a problem with that. Okay, again, you've expanded that, but that's okay. This idea of subsection E is again unchanged. It's encouraging individuals and community groups to assist the police department in implementation of police programs and services. Section F, facilitating police department transparency and accountability to the community in the event of a police-involved incident causing community concern as defined by the board. That means as defined by you. You don't get to define it. That gets defined by frankly, by sunshine, and that gets defined by state statute, okay? So in this instance, the way you've written this, what you're saying is we would get to decide what we're gonna make public. Well, sunshine allows for an investigative process, and until an investigative process is complete, those records are closed, okay? This is in conflict with that, because this would give you the authority to make that decision. And that decision gets made, frankly, by the chief. It gets made by the city manager. And so this is a situation where you're running directly into 610, headlong. It goes on to say this may include listening to community members, reviewing materials such as police department reports, policies, and camera footage, consulting with police department representatives, and making recommendations to the police department, city council, and city manager. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the idea that records are closed during an investigation itself. But that's what sunshine says. So an investigative report, while it's being done, or while an investigation is open, is closed, and it's done that way in order to protect the integrity of the investigation. It's done so that people can't tamper with information. And frankly, it's done so that people can't use information in an inappropriate way. So in this instance, if you are giving yourselves the authority to decide what that's going to be, you're putting yourself above sunshine. And sunshine just, it conflicts directly with sunshine. Can't do it. Okay. Now, it doesn't conflict with our charter, but it does conflict directly with the sunshine laws. Okay. I will tell you also, the problem that you run into here is it's timing. Okay. So if you want to say after the fact, you want to talk about an investigation that's finished and closed and the record is open, I don't have any problem with this at all. But you got to be at that point. And this doesn't state that. It says the police department will make a good faith effort to share materials requested by the board in furtherance of this duty. Again, the problem is timing. When is that going to happen? And again, I think that this, as it's written, this proposal as it's written, is truly problematic. If you're talking about after the fact, I get it. You know, or again, talk about the situation involving the shooting that occurred on Highway 44. I know that you guys saw that tape. And again, as harrowing as that was, at that point, you know, there was still an investigative element to that, but that case wasn't going to be prosecuted. I mean, the poor man was dead. He shot our police officer, thank God it wasn't. But again, that was a situation where the timing of that could allow that. There is some discretion that's there, but that discretion has to stay with the department. Okay. And again, if it goes to a prosecution that is going to be handled in St. Louis County, a lot of that discretion is going to be, the chief is going to have to defer to the county prosecutor in terms of deciding when things get disclosed and how they get disclosed. So it could take a very long time before you can get to a point where there's going to be something, but that was going to be a case where there's never going to be a criminal prosecution. And so, you know, under those circumstances, showing that information, making sure you understand what an individual might encounter while on the street, that's why those things are done that way. Okay. And again, yes, it is ultimately up to the chief, It is a situation where, again, he has to decide, but he decides that in the context of sunshine. And he doesn't do that through me. He doesn't call me and say, Neil, can I do it? I mean, sometimes he might, or sometimes he may. But again, he knows this better than anyone, having been doing it as long as he has. Okay. So that section F is truly problematic. I understand why you want it. You want to be able to talk about things in real time. You want to be able to talk about specific problems as they're encountered. I will tell you, it's a function of time. So again, you can do it, but you have to do it at a point where everything is done. You have to do it at a point where Sunshine says these are now open records and available to you. There's still a learning moment. There's still a teaching moment in all of that. But again, it just may not happen as quickly as you might otherwise like. Okay. And the problem you run into, by the way, is that there are always two kinds of investigations, particularly in the use of force case. One might be the underlying criminal allegation, but the other one might be an internal investigation that's going on as well. And so you have to be mindful of both of those things. Under no circumstances can we ever, as a commission, step into the area of an internal investigation. That again is in conflict with our charter. We have an entire section regarding personnel and their rights. If we try and step into the area of any kind of disciplinary action involving police officers and that sort of thing, we run afoul of the charter. Okay. And frankly, we couldn't construct a set of ordinances that would let us happen, or let that happen. We'd have to change the charter in order to do that.
So.
Yes.
I feel like there's a trust issue that's kind of bubbling up. This police, you trust us, don't you, Chief? You trust us.
I trust the board members, but
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what.
Well, I just feel, I feel like, you know, we're backpedaling now away from where we were heading to, and maybe what we were heading to is not possible for a board like this. But I think what we've been discussing here for the past several months has really been moving towards helping a specific sector of our Webster Groves community have greater trust in the police department. That's a really important thing for this board to create. And, you know, Sunshine's getting in the way, and the ordinance is getting in the way. And so I guess I'm just looking to you, what do we do?
Again, well,
That's, I'm sorry, Cindy, that's not a matter of trust, that's a
Right.
matter of the law. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to steer you or
Okay,
any certain way.
okay,
And I try to intentionally to stay out of that.
okay.
But there is the sunshine law, there is the city charter, and regardless of the intent and regardless of some of the things the board or myself may have an interest in, there's certain things that can't be done. And so it's not a matter of trust, it's a
So
matter of the
can
law.
I ask a question? So part of the language here is, okay, in the event of a police involved innocent incident causing community concern as defined by the board, this may include listening to community members. So just stopping there. Like, so if there was an incident that was under investigation and community members just wanted to have a listening ear in the PCEB without us making recommendations or, you know, anything like that, are we able to do that?
yeah, so let's say that
Okay.
there's a newspaper article that says an event occurred.
Yeah.
And you want to talk to the people because they've read the newspaper article and they want to talk about the event. There's nothing that would prevent you under sunshine from doing that. However, you can't say to the chief, we want your records on this ongoing investigation so that we can speak knowingly about what has happened.
Got it.
Okay, now again, it's gonna be a little bit uncomfortable for the chief because he'll of course be in a situation where he's hearing things that may be right or may be wrong in terms of, but he can't correct it because it's an ongoing investigation. Now, but you can still do that.
Okay.
You can do what you've just described. There's no problem there.
Okay.
Okay,
So I think that's a beginning. Is being available and able to listen in
Communication.
real time.
Communication.
Yeah.
I think people want, I think when we did that thing with the college students, I think they really appreciated you being there and being able to articulate, you knew a lot of things that they were talking about. And I think that's what people want is they want not just to talk to the board, but they want to talk to the board and the police.
Yeah.
You know, to let their stories be heard. You know?
Yeah, I do. And there's nothing about this that would prevent that.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's okay, but you have to tell people when they're coming in, look, we're in a meeting and it's an open meeting, and maybe it's a Zoom meeting, or maybe it's an in-person meeting, but be prepared for that public exposure, good, bad, or indifferently, I can't do anything about that, okay? And again, the investigative element, you know, I've said this, but I'll say it again, it's all part of due process, okay? And we do this for the people that are charged. We do this for the officers that may be involved. We do it for the victims who are in the matter itself. We try and do this to protect their privacy until decisions are made. Now, maybe that decision is a trial. Maybe that decision is we're not going to do anything. There are points when all of these things become open, and all of these things can be discussed openly. And that's what I'm saying. Now, the real-time part of that is a little problematic. And again, for the last 18 months, it's been really problematic because everything is violated. Everything is stopped. All I'm saying here is that you can get to that end, but maybe not in the time that you'd like to. So again, with the recognition that there almost never is a police investigative report always going to be a closed record. Once the investigation is done, it's supposed to be an open record. Okay, and the chief and I have had this conversation a number of times, and we disclose this. Okay, when people call and ask for them, they get it. It's a question of knowing when it's done, okay? And again, is that something that Webster Groves plays games with? It's not. The chief is very careful to make sure that those, you know, again, when it's done, it's done. We don't hide the ball. So it's all a function of time more than anything else. So if we're creative, we can still get to that end. We can still get people in. We can still have those conversations. We want to be open with them and say, look, it is going to be a public record. And if you're going to have these conversations, understand it is going to be done publicly. But, you know, again, if police are going to be here and there's going to be a listing here, and again, I think you can still get that same end. Just may not be in the timing.
Yeah.
So my only concerns, again, are making sure that you're not conflicting with the charter and the search. Those are the two biggest things. And, you know, again, I was looking at this and thinking, okay, you know, again, there's a state statute that affects what we call civilian review boards. You are not a civilian review board. And curiously, one of the things that I was looking at when I was looking at the fact that the provision suggested that you exclude the ex officio member who would be the chief. If you went to a civilian review board, ultimately, when you make recommendations, you don't make them to the city council, you don't make them to the city manager, you make them by statute to the chief law enforcement officer, to him. So ultimately, you don't exclude them because you're ultimately going to be reporting. Now that has a very, very different connotation. We'd have to change the charter to do a civilian review board because we've got a personnel section. And all of those things take place within the context of the charter itself. But again, just trying to make sure it all works. You can still get there. It's a matter of being creative, but it's also a matter of recognizing that everything you do as a commission is done in the open. I hate to sound like I'm the naysayer. I'm not trying to be that. I mean, I think this has been very creative, and I think that these are good things to think about. I think the purposes are all good. And again, frankly, in terms of the construction, only where we have those direct conflicts with Sunshine and with the charter, do we really have to rethink how this is written. But the concept is what this whole thing was set out to do, which is to be transparent and open. So the listening sessions are problematic because I really can't conceive of a circumstance where I could ever squeeze you into a closed door.
This is as a comment on that, and I know it's difficult for people to feel comfortable doing that. We've done it a few times now, not just with us. I would hope that at some point, if people would have some level of confidence when you're talking about the trust, that there's never been any kind of repercussion from them talking to us. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been any kind of blowback. We haven't been critical of it. Some of it, quite honestly, I felt like maybe it was something that wasn't either, not so I won't say illegitimate, but wasn't necessarily accurate. But I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't think it's the right thing to do to say something, say so. I think people need to have that voice. So I have tried, and I know that our command staff, when they're present, very hard to be strictly listeners, to try and understand what people are saying and get that feedback. So even though we can't have a closed session, I would hope that most people, based upon the experience that they've had coming here, would feel comfortable telling whatever it is they want to tell.
All the sections with websites and information and record keeping, all that kind of stuff, I have no problem with any of that, okay? And again, the idea here is to keep the information so that people can see it. When we've had conversations, when we talk about things, we do want to make that sort of information available. And in fact, Sunshine says we have. So those are the limits. And again, I realize that sounds like I'm just coming in and saying no, I'm not, but it may sound that way. And I'm sure not trying to throw a glass of cold water or anything. You know, again, I think that the purpose that the purposes that you serve and the duties that you have, I think are very, very important, particularly in this day and age. And so again, I would tell you that if there's a way I can help, I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to continue to work with anyone that wants to regarding, you know, my insight into what happens. I mean, I get there anyway, right? If there's going to be a change in the ordinance, it goes through me and it goes to Katie, and then ultimately it goes to the council. So again, I mean, I'll certainly try and do that which makes your voice as loud as I can make.
Any questions?
I haven't gotten any text, so I don't think there's a baby.
Thanks, Neil. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
And again,
Yeah,
if there's
appreciate
ever a question, please don't hesitate to call. I'd like to do what I can
Thank
do
you.
to help in any way and or answer any questions that you might have. Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's a girl, we know that.
That's a good thing. That's
So,
cool.
you know what? This will be my third, and I'll have 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson. So. What the heck is my back? I might put it somewhere. Oh, there it is. Thanks. I have it first.
I can't, in regard to that, I can't speak for the council and Mary, even though she can speak for them more than I can. It's up to them, but I don't think there's a critical sense of urgency for the recommendations to make some changes. I feel fairly comfortable that they're going to renew the artists in October. So just because there's no edits there in October when they renew the board, that any recommendations or edits or whatever could certainly come after that. So if you all are agreeable, I think this was kind of like a starting point, take a look at some of these things, and you have some time to consider them and come up with what you would like to do. And like I said, it doesn't have to be done by October, because I'm fairly certain that it's going to be renewed, and then you'll have to have time to make some amendments. Whatever.
Anything else on that?
No, we will, and to change this to the, get rid of the October sunset on it, we need 2 readings, so we'll do that at the 2 meetings in September. And there's just so much going on, and we need a full discussion of this, so that will follow.
For the 2 September. It's
There are
a
2 September
reading
meetings.
of the,
Yeah, you do a
ordinance.
first and second reading if you're going to change an ordinance, and then you need another meeting to do your 3rd reading. And so that's why we're going to do this soon in September, so that we don't put ourselves out of business.
I would say that what we did with the Webster University group, and hopefully with the Alliance and others, I think nothing I heard is in conflict that we've done so far.
Yeah.
And we felt like we've made some progress
Mhm.
and can build upon it. So I think,
yeah,
though it's frustrating to we can't do everything we want.
know.
I think there's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
And we can really build from where we are
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
I think we gained a lot. We had open discussion. People were heard. And they're gonna be heard more.
I hope
That's
we
my
can do
hope.
that. Yeah.
Because that's what I took from it too, is nothing we've done as it exists already.
Right.
We're just gonna make it better.
Yeah, as I said, we don't really need those changes. I mean, I'm committed to being transparent. I think we've worked well in terms of incidents that have come up, but I'm also perfectly comfortable with formalizing into the language in an ordinance to make sure that, you know, in perpetuity, that's something that's there.
The thing I keep thinking about too is like sort of the way trust works. So we're hopefully helping to build trust between the community and the police back and forth, but also with the community and us. And because it's, you know, unless the community trusts us, then we're not, you know, able to listen as effectively and bring the messages as effectively. So,
I agree.
I agree also. And my thought was this, first of all, this is very helpful for us to kind of know, and I think we do need to define what we can do so that we can articulate to the community. I think that's really the biggest thing, so that they can know what our role will be, how we will function. And then Chief, I know you mentioned that the closed listening sessions wouldn't be good, but I wonder if there are things that you have tried that would help, so that we, because a big part of this, I think also is to be able to, it doesn't have to be closed, but you're saying we can still have listening sessions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said, I think that right,
Right,
that's
just open.
over time, and I think we've already done a little bit of that, but I think over time, people will recognize there's no retribution, there isn't anything that happens because you come forward with a story or would it be negative, and there isn't anybody here. I certainly tried very hard not to in any way be in conflict with what somebody was saying, but let people tell, what it is that they feel like they need to tell and feel comfortable that we're listening, and so we will do what we can to make people feel like they could come in here and not have to worry about any of those things. So,
And that may be part of our role, to help the community understand that. So
Right.
that's what.
I mean, hopefully you all, man, we haven't,
Yeah.
the police haven't said, oh, that's not right. That This is, I certainly would never want to put somebody in a position here that's coming to try and tell us what they feel, whether, whatever the perception might be, that they're wrong, or that they shouldn't have done it, or that there's going to be some kind of repercussion coming here and saying negative things about the police department, because that's just not true.
Anything else? Let's see, we're gonna work tonight. We worked on our mission. And now we're gonna work on our vision. So when we're working on our vision statement, we have to kind of find, this will be a fairly simple process. Kind of what we were discussing tonight, the human value of our work. And Angela and Katie, I think you two were really getting at that with what you just said. What is the human value of our work? How does PCEB improve the lives of people? And let's just kind of have an open discussion about that. How do we improve the lives of people with what we do? Thoughts?
Give them a forum to be heard. It's hopefully increasingly open and feel comfortable. So
be a sense of a safety net, maybe.
Kind of digging deeper into that, how do we make Webster Groves a better place to live and work? Or do we?
My idea is that the existence of the board itself, it's not, the existence alone is not enough, but the existence does say something. Because it says we live in a community where all voices are valued and important.
I wonder what ratio of community knows of the board. If they know that they can come to the board, or who the members are.
That's a very good point. Are we
When I
operating in a
addressed it
vacuum?
at our church, they had no clue.
Really?
Yeah, some did, but most of them didn't.
How can we help? How can we help with that? I mean, we meet once a month. We talk about really good and important things, but is our message getting out there enough to the people who really need to know we're there?
think the blurbs in the, what's the Purple Time were very helpful in starting to create the awareness that we exist. I don't know if it's something like that we can include the names, or if there's another place, I don't really have a website, you know, I don't know where we can include the names, but it needs to be visible someplace, to your point, in places where people look so that they can, when they associate the board, they, and you know, sometimes having that recognition, recognizing somebody's name helps you to know it's real.
Mhm.
You know, hey, oh, I know this person, I've seen this name before, and it makes people, you know, maybe feel more comfortable in the fact that there is a group out there that is advocating for everybody, for our community. And I think that something else is important that helps with that. If everybody feels like they're a part of the community, it helps in that their ideas are also helpful, that we want them to be involved. I think is important, you know, just that invitation, you know, to be involved in this process is really key.
Could we draft somewhat of an informative letter? And I'm thinking spiritually this way, that if we sent to each church, usually a lot of churches, most churches in the community do have an announcement period where they announce what's going on in the community or what's going on in their church. That way, in each church, they can announce, you know, that Western has this police community board. And, you know, maybe even list the names. You may not want your name on it, I don't know, but at least that way, those, most of your members of churches around here live here. That way, you know, each church could, pastors could read, you know, and inform their members.
I like that idea.
I love that idea, and I think it also be read at the community organizations, you know, it's, you know, like a place where you know, people are there. I think that's great.
On this event we're planning,
Mhm.
if this could be promoted that way,
Mhm.
that puts us out there in the public eye and, you know, gradually build a participation.
Yeah.
Active participation. Yeah.
Anybody want to be the champion of it?
You know,
If we all draft it, I can get it to the pastors. Well, most of them to the church. And have
You wanna
them.
help
If they
draft
will read it.
You want to help draft?
Yeah. I can do that.
you know what would be really cool is to have a piece, a brochure or card or something that had the mission of PCED on it. What our vision is, which is what we keep talking about, this awareness of the PCED, kind of the website on it, maybe something about membership when we meet, so that you have a card or a piece that really talks about who we are when we meet. I think
Infographic almost.
yeah, just an info, that's a good word. Infographic on, that could be used, maybe even on Facebook, or could be used somewhere, but once we get that vision done, if we have our mission and our vision and can put that together, then it's an easy way for people to know who we are. We could hand that out at our event. So, you know,
I think that's a really good
it's how we communicate, or communicate with us, or call us, or not call us. Email us or something.
Another call.
No, we don't want phone calls. So.
So we've been kind of talking about, you know, the human value, how we try to make Webster a place where everyone feels like they belong. Any kind of value words that you can think of before we really try to draft this vision statement? I heard welcoming, I heard belonging, inviting, and open.
I've written down honest, transparent.
Anything else?
Something, I don't know, this may be too complex to get at, but I think a lot of it that is new, I think, or innovative is that I don't know what's happening in other cities, but like we're acknowledging that there is a painful history and we're proactively trying to heal in our community, in our little spot. So I don't know if that's happening other places.
Trying to be a beacon in a way.
Right. It's like we acknowledging the past, but also looking to the future.
Yeah. Anything else? I'll share a couple of vision statements before we try and hammer this out. We shared these earlier. Amazon, our vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online at the lowest possible prices. The American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, ASPCA. The vision of ASPCA is that the United States is a humane community in which all animals are treated with respect and kindness. So thinking about what our vision is, what our values are, I'll kind of go through them again. Can we put together a statement that is our vision for our work here? We want to provide a forum for people to be heard, increasingly open, a safety net, a community where all voices are valued, acknowledging a painful past and looking towards the future, trying to heal. We want to be a beacon of hope. We want to be transparent, honest. We want people to feel that they belong, and that they're always invited. Well, they belong, so they don't have to be invited. So, what kinds of thoughts do you have on creating a vision statement? I really like what Katie was getting at, acknowledging a painful history. We don't have to go all that way, but acknowledging the past and looking to the future. Anything else?
I like that, acknowledging the painful past. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with looking
We're
to
creating a
the
new
future
future.
or, yeah.
Creating.
But you could say
Creating a new
looking to the future, like looking to keep it painful. So you make me look at it.
Yes, creating
Creating a new future that values similar.
a
Like
new future that, we'll keep talking, that values, what was that?
Every citizen, you know,
Every
like you were
citizen.
saying.
Yeah. Every, okay, here's a draft. Acknowledging the past, creating a new future that values every citizen. What else? Other thoughts? That values all voices.
I was gonna say, we're every individual feels safe to be heard. I don't know. That might be getting away from.
Every values all voices. I want to add on something about safety, values all voices. Maybe safety is, do we need safety?
I mean,
I think we need safety.
something about
I'll just add what I was thinking and
Mhm.
Scott added, but, I don't know, our environment would be the police and community partner to keep neighbors safe.
Oh, say that
Police and
again. What was
Yeah,
that?
that's
Police
good.
and community partner to keep neighbors safe.
Police and
And-
community partner. Yeah. something
Yes,
like
I like that.
I like that.
That's together.
And I along to piggyback on that, there's this idea that we're a community where safety is understood broadly as both physical and emotional safety. I don't know if that's too psychological,
So are we creating a new partnership?
right?
Yeah, just kind of.
I like
mix
that. How can
Embrace
we,
together.
how can we pull that?
Embracing a partnership.
Ooh, embracing a
that?
partnership. That's
Embracing a
good.
partner-
Okay.
Embracing, I like that word,
Embracing
embracing a
A
partnership.
partnership.
That sounds warm and fuzzy.
Okay, what else? Embracing a partnership.
Between police and the community. That values all voices, all those things that we just listed.
That,
That
Acknowledges the
values-
past, values all voices, and looks to create a future, a new future.
Yeah, yeah. I like the present tense as well, because it will always be relevant, you know what I mean? It's here.
okay, here's where it is. Embracing a partnership between police and the community and the community that, I don't know, that's gonna be that's
And
off.
our community.
Our community that values all voices, acknowledges the past, and creates a new future.
Lovely.
I like it. There it is.
There it is.
Is a new future, I'm just being picky
Yeah,
because I
I
read,
don't
is a
know.
new future too vague? Maybe we need a better
It's sort of like
adjective.
Healthy future.
Ooh, a healthy future, I like that.
Healthy.
And I think in this, we should think about the mission statement we developed too.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I have now
Right.
build trust.
Yeah, please, because I
Yeah,
don't.
build trust between the police and the community through listening, positive communication, healing, and mutual understanding. So I think some of that is already in there to me.
Mhm, so they
Flows together.
They
Yeah, I
flow
think
together.
They
It's
flow
a
together.
brand. It's a
We did it.
brand.
I can't believe we did it.
Good.
This is great.
Feeling better now.
I'm feeling much
I
better.
love a
I know, it was
brainstorm.
probably all over my face for a while there. I'll let it go. Okay, so, item number 7, hot topics. Angela had
A hot
one.
topic.
Right, speaking of,
Hot
hot
topic.
topic. There's been a lot of discussion in the community and also within the Webster, North Webster Neighborhood Coalition about fireworks within the community, and it's been ongoing. And recently there was a request to kind of talk about it now, so that next year, when it's time for fireworks again, that maybe there's something, there's a different experience. This year, and I didn't notice this, there was, people started fireworks earlier than usual. And some said maybe because of Juneteenth, maybe some, we don't know, but for the people in the neighborhood, especially as it gets closer and on the 4th, they don't feel safe. Fireworks or rockets, people say, going toward their bushes and on roofs, and people are afraid that something may catch fire. Some of the senior adults also talked about just not feeling comfortable going out saying things to people, and just wanting to know what can be done, kind of I don't know what the police policy is on fireworks, and if there's anything that can be done to help curtail and maybe starting the conversation, educating people was a thought that maybe would help some. Recognizing some traditions been going on for years,
Oh, not this bad.
but and I noticed this year, I actually,
Awful.
it really was. This was the worst that I've seen it, heard it, rather. I actually just put a chair out in the backyard and just said, because I could hear it indoors
Oh, you can
anyway.
see, I mean,
Trying to
it's
figure out, and it was
everywhere.
just like, it was a fireworks show.
Mhm.
So I can understand what people were saying. It was massive. So, like I said, but a lot of people, and then they talked about the fact there are veterans in the area, animals, if these fireworks also scare, it can cause other issues. So, they just asked, about starting the conversation and getting the word out, that it's something that, is bothersome and a safety issue, and kind of what can
We can help with that. We certainly can send officers to meetings and Northwestern Coalition meetings. One of the problems with that, as far as education goes, is that usually the people that are attending those meetings aren't the people that are shooting off the fireworks.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's generally a younger group.
Oh, not mine.
When
I can tell you exactly. And he's not very nice, and he's not a kid, and.
Well, I mean,
you know, they're
there's,
spending Thousands of dollars.
there are, I'm sure, exceptions to that rule, but in general, it's
Oh,
younger, it is younger people who do that. But out of, when you saw the fireworks, just out of curiosity, because it can be a problem, and I certainly can't deny that it's, it can be an issue with something you're talking about in terms of starting a fire, or scaring animals, or people with PTSD. But we had, we had 57 fireworks complaints so far this year. Of the 57, 43 were between July the 1st and July the 5th. One of the problems we have in terms of, well, there's a couple of things with enforcement. We obviously, we enforce the ordinance if it's something that's egregious. But during community days, which is usually July 1 through July the 4th, we have an officer, we have a supervisor and 4 to 5 officers on the street covering the entire city for fireworks complaints. And everybody else in the department is working community days. So we don't have a huge staff to run to all the fireworks call. The second one is we try and do with fireworks what we do with low level incidents. That is, ask people to stop if they comply. Then we usually that's the end of it. We certainly can start issuing more citations, but I want to be careful about being heavy-handed, because if there is sometimes a disparate impact on some of that appears as though we're over policing. So it's a conversation we can have. That it's primarily a problem that runs between late June and the middle of July. But we can certainly do that, try and help educate and try and be a little more proactive if we know where it's coming from.
oh, yes, I'm happy to tell you.
Are there any like
We celebrated Juneteenth
programs, or
also.
like, I know National Night Out has things that help educate people to get together. Are there things you can put up, or?
There are things out there that we can take advantage of. We haven't really done a lot of that, so we can do some more of it in terms of education partners, some of the programs and things out there that do advertise and help educate. So I'll make sure that next year we do that. It's not a community issue. If people want us to be more aggressive in enforcement of it, right, which would be writing citations. One of the things that happens when you write citations, though, is that a lot of people don't treat them serious, which means they don't show up, they don't pay the citation, which means they get issued a court date, they don't show up for the court date, which means they get issued a warrant, which means they get stopped, which means they get arrested, which means they go to jail. They're sitting in jail because they saw fireworks.
Mhm.
It's something we want to try and be careful about.
I wondered if we ever did some sort of campaign where we talked about how fireworks are nothing more than throwing your money up in smoke. And there are so many social needs. And so don't spend your money on fireworks. Give it to a food pantry. Give it to the Webster Kirkwood Ministries or Webster Rock Hill Ministries. Something that we could do that would say, make these people look really bad for spending all that money that goes up in flames. I mean, I think there's a campaign there that we haven't quite.
Well, we can
used
take
yet.
it, like I said, there are things that are out there that we can take to meetings, neighborhood night, but also get some
Yeah,
in the
let's-
community connection at the Baby to Friday page. We certainly get some of that on eSIMs and our Facebook page. Like I said, one of the problems with that is it's probably not going to reach a large amount of people that are actually setting off fireworks.
Were there instances where they were truly used aggressively, like bottle rockets shot at
The only
houses?
I noted, there was one where, no, actually there was two. There was a group of 20 people that were apparently being aggressive with the fireworks. And then there's also one incident with a couple of cars that were apparently shooting fireworks at each other on their trail.
Oh my God.
In both cases, the one with 20 people, we got there, they had all dispersed, or it was not a legitimate call, but more likely they dispersed, which is my idea. It's not a problem unless you're fairly close, people won't run away. The ones with the cars, the officers couldn't locate either. That was found, I think off of Brentwood and Ravine down there.
Guilty, I did that 50 years ago.
Was there two?
We did in the city. We played at each other. Yeah, it was dangerous, but we were done.
Well, again, I mean, that's the problem that we have. We're trying to police and be compassion and understanding. It can be a dangerous thing, but at the same time, I really would hate to see somebody sitting in jail because they set off a couple of fireworks.
Yeah, it's interesting. What it brings up to me is in the ideal world, if my next door neighbor was doing it and it was bothering me or my dog, then I would go over and knock on the door and say, would you mind, this is hard for me or whatever. But people are scared to do that.
Can't do
So
that.
that's a concern. And so I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think how, I don't know if this is under our umbrella or not, but the idea of like having empathy for your neighbors and sort of being, yeah.
Yeah, like something to educate people just about, I mean, I didn't even think about people with PTSD. I mean, that's a real thing.
I like have empathy for your neighbor, because the person you're probably talking about, have no idea who it is, who will probably do more.
Oh, right. I know there are some
People
people who
got out
would do
and
more,
they would do
right?
more,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking if the
Yeah.
mayor can't go say, please stop, who
Oh, I would
can?
never do that with him.
Yeah.
And what number, would people call the non-emergency telephone number if they wanted to, if something was getting out of hand, or how would they?
They're wanting to report it, they can dial the general number at the dispatch center, but they can also dial 911 if that's something they feel needs immediate attention.
Okay.
It's an emergency number, but fortunately, we're not like St. Louis City. We have enough dispatchers and enough of a low call volume. So it's not imperative that I tell you, don't call 911 unless it's an emergency.
Anything else on that? Any other hot topics? Oh, I guess so. There are, was that considered was that a public remark or let's just read that one? Oh, she sent me.
Well, I don't, it's, she's up for, I just know she sent me an email and copied you on it, and I responded. Did you respond?
I haven't got it yet, sorry about that.
That's right.
I was just flagging that I hope to make a remark, but no, you don't have to read that one.
Okay.
I appreciate your willingness, but, well, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, and particularly tonight, thankful to Chief Curtis and Mr. Gruntrigger and the city for dedicating the resources, people's time to go through our recommendations. And then I just wanted to repeat our purpose in doing that, which is to acknowledge how far this board has come since the beginning. There's just been a lot of strides made, and we're concerned that the statute doesn't capture the full weight of what you are now working on as a group. And we didn't want to leave it to trust that would continue when some of you aren't present anymore. I mean, if Chief Curtis weren't here, there's a lot of things that are based on the culture of this body and how it's grown up and the people that have been involved. And so the idea would be, having paid attention to your work, to get anything that we can get in so that it sticks. That was our hope. Now, that being said, I'm very appreciative to understand some of the legal mechanics of what's possible and what's not possible. And I trust that this group could be creative about everything. Doesn't have to be in a statute, you know what I mean? And I'm not suggesting that you would go around what's legal, but what I'm saying is some of these things are informal in terms of how you might do community listening in small groups and that kind of thing. There's no reason to codify the exclusion of Chief Curtis from a meeting if that runs afoul of the law. The spirit of the idea, though, is the acknowledgement that you all have made, which is sometimes people can't share or are not comfortable sharing. You might need another intermediary. The Alliance has provided that function in the past and would, of course, still do so. But we're listening to you in terms of what you think might be effective to make sure we're really hearing community voices who are vulnerable and not comfortable sharing their truth with police presence, at least not initially. And there's other ways to do it, you know, so I appreciate understanding the legalities there. With the incident review, I think that our hope is that, you know, this body is best positioned in terms of thinking about citizens to think through what if something terrible happens. What can this board do to increase the legitimacy of the police department, the trust in the police department, the feeling that things are gonna be done on the up and up. I mean, you're gonna be in the throes of that if that were ever to happen, you know, whether it's in the statute or not. People are gonna realize you're there. And so, I mean, Chief Curtis has practiced transparency so far, shown camera footage. It sounds like there needs to be some creativity and exploration of how the statute could name the fact that that's the expectation. Maybe it's a timing thing. I feel like Mr. Bruntrigger could creatively draft, you know, around the problem of the open investigation. And I don't want you to think the Alliance was suggesting a conversion to you all having personnel power or any of that. It's just trying to codify what you've been doing and to recognize that you're going to be situated in that way if something were to ever happen. And it's better to think about that before we're in that situation. The last thing is just that how can we help with next steps? There's a number of little things in there, like you all have mentioned. We included adding a Webster University representative based on listening to this group saying that you thought it'd be great if there was one. So there's a lot of little things in there that, you know, we'd love to help make sure they get looked at, just because we've been tracking what you're doing and trying to take notes and say, hey, it'd be cool to have this in writing. So if you want to do like a work session with like a couple of you and a couple of us to present some joint recommendations that acknowledge what we just learned tonight, or maybe we take a step back and let you guys go for it, but we just want to be of service to help this get done. So, and I forgot to say, I'm joined by Carla Umbrester, Valerie Welch, and Sandy Mudd from our police strengthening the PCEB committee. That was what we were calling this project. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can follow up on what I said, there's no sense of critical urgency to make those recommendations, but you do need to do that. So, you know, something maybe in the next meeting, you need to maybe formulate something a little more solid with some recommendations.
So the next two board meetings will, I'm sorry, any more remarks?
So this is actually about the fireworks thing. I just want to thank you for bringing that up. I mean, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if
I'm
you're
sorry.
gonna make
Yes.
remarks, you need to say what your name is.
Sure, it's Carla with the K. Armbruster, ARMBRUSTER.
Okay.
I just want to thank you for bringing that up. It's been a huge issue at my house. And you know, there are other people, I mean, I do think that it's something that there are a number of people in the community who would appreciate some, I think, education about, because I think there are other people who just feel like it's not a legitimate concern. And the more they see that other people do think it is, I think that can make a difference.
Other comments? So the next two meetings, as I'm thinking, Mayor Welch will have to be the reading of.
Yes, we'll do the reading. I don't think that'll be an issue at all.
Okay,
We'll
not-
just do that. I
Is it the
just,
whole meeting?
oh, no, it'll be on the agenda.
Okay.
And there's not gonna be an issue. It's just gonna be getting rid of that sunset clause.
Good work tonight. Very good work. Thank you to our visitors that came. Thank you for your remarks. Our next meeting,
When's our event?
our event is, sorry,
October 23rd, right?
yes, it's in October. Good.
October 23rd,
I'm gonna make sure.
and it is at
Ivor Crockett. I have, no, I'm sorry, October 16th.
Oh, it's October 16th.
Oh, it's-
Yes,
And do we have a time on that?
from 12 to 4.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get my,
Sorry, 12:30.
well, noon to 4, October 16th, for sure.
For sure.
Good. Let's see what I can do to get an honored guest there.
Oh, we want our guests. And Angela, Kevin, you and I, Scott and I are gonna, we're still working on all of the particulars for it. Working away. Okay, we're signing up for them for different things. Some hot dogs, beverages, some sort of tailgating type games, cornhole, giant jingle, which is Scott's favorite thing, and and a tug of war. I would love to have a tug of war with between the police and some of the
great.
kids. So things like that.
Right.
And maybe a volleyball net for the adults.
I think that'd be cute.
That'd be fun. Okay, so I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
All right, yeah, thanks very much.
Is our next meeting the 21st of September? Is that right? September 21st is the next.
It's the same, is that right?
Are we September